That's okay. All right, good morning. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap 2 times. Okay, good morning. Much better. I actually wanted to make sure this worked, but it's always nice to have a round of applause in the morning. As Dr. Komanecki said, my name is Tamika Dobbins, and I am the Interim Dean for the Student Experience here at the University of Toledo. And I've been in this role for probably about 6 months now. Prior to, I was in the position of ombudsman, and so with some restructuring within the Division of Student Affairs, I transitioned into this position. I've taken on a whole lot more responsibilities, and which gives me the opportunity to speak to a wonderful group like you. Can you all hear me in the back? If you can, just say yes. In the very back, can you hear me? Okay. I'll look for feedback. So what I'm going to be talking with you all about for the next couple of minutes is going to focus on creating classroom civility. And one of the requests that, let me try to hook this on. Okay. One of the things in speaking with Corey from the graduate studies or graduate school, that he encouraged me to kind of focus on. We know there's a lot about, we learn a lot about civility in the classroom when we're talking about that face-to-face interaction, but we don't always quite focus on the online learning environment and how to ensure that our students are being civil even within Blackboard or within the online classroom context. And so for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to talk about both the in-classroom and online classroom experience when it comes to civility and what we expect of our students here at the University of Toledo. So just an outline so you kind of know and can follow along where I'm going. We'll define classroom civility. We're going to recognize reasons for the increase in incivility, and you may say, well, I don't think it's increased. People were still disruptive when I was in school. But I do think that with the changing of cultures, that there is some increase, or the actions of incivility in the classroom look a little different. So we'll look at why the reasons for increase, examine strategies to prevent incivilities, and develop intervention strategies to address and document incivility. So here's a quote. 10 years ago, distractions that could cause poor behavior in the classroom were confined to the classroom itself. An interesting seatmate to chat with, a window to gaze out of, an overheated room to slumber in. Now, and I like to say but now, the entire world via the internet is a potential distraction, and with a cell phone, MP3 player, and a laptop in almost every student's possession, the temptation to become distracted and thus to engage in discourteous classroom behavior is overwhelming. I won't ask you what you think about that, but I'll tell you, I was just like, when I read it, because absolutely, with technology is at the hand of all of us. I'm sure many of you have a cell phone or an iPad or iPod or laptop with you today. So you can easily become distracted with just the push of a button within the classroom setting. So definitely there are some differences in how things looked probably 10 years ago, I know when I was in school. So what is classroom civility? An atmosphere that optimizes teaching and learning, where both teachers and students contribute to the creation of a civil and non-disruptive forum. So in essence, it's a classroom environment where learning can transpire in a respectful forum. And the adverse of that is, if we're looking at classroom incivility, then you're in a classroom or in an academic environment where there's a lot of rude behavior or disrespectful behavior going on. And you're not going to be able to maximize your teaching, nor students will be able to maximize their learning within that environment. Here at UT, we actually have what we call a 911 folder. And hopefully once we have more come in, I will be able to distribute all of them to you all. So you have one along with my business card, so that if in the event that you're faced with a disruption in the classroom or you're faced with a distressed student, you know exactly the resources. You actually have them easily at your fingertips to be able to reach out to the appropriate resources on campus. But in that 911 folder, we focus on the disruptive student versus the distressed student. And so when we look at the disruptive student or disruptive behavior, and I say it's the same thing as being incivil in the classroom, we categorize it as a student whose conduct interferes with other students, faculty, or staff in their access to an appropriate educational or work environment. Disruptive behaviors may be a violation of the code of conduct. So Tamika, okay, disruptive behavior, what do you mean by that? I mean students yelling in the classroom or screaming at each other or intimidating each other, threatening. Believe it or not, it happens. It may not have happened when you were going through your undergraduate experience, but it does happen today. I've met with my first month within the role as Dean of Students, and I had a student in my office that it was a loud outburst, and it was a loud argument that happened in the classroom. And so the professor reached out to me along with the department chair and said, we need your assistance with this. We need to know how to move forward with this student possibly in the classroom and may not be, because it may not be beneficial for the student to come back. So it does happen, threatening words or actions or threats of physical assault, okay? So those are just some examples of what we deem as disruptive behavior in the classroom. And hear me clearly when I say those behaviors are violations against the student code of conduct, okay? So students may not know it. Many of our students have no idea what's in the student code of conduct. They don't know until they are faced with an alleged violation. So, but we want you to have this information so that you understand what we deem as appropriate and inappropriate behavior for our students. Now, when we look at the distressed student or distressed behavior, it's a student who is exhibiting worrisome behavior that may indicate that he or she is coping with a serious mental health problem. A distressed student may also exhibit behavior that causes others to worry about the student's own safety or the safety of others. Distressed student, totally different from disruptive, but the behaviors could be the same. You may have a distressed student that jumps up in the class and they begin yelling, or they're upset about something, or they're really frustrated because they don't feel like they really understand the information that's being taught to them. And so they're dealing with an underlying issue that is causing them to be distressed, but yet it comes out as being disruptive, okay? And so when it comes to distress, we recognize our students are going to deal with stress. And I'll tell you, many of them come to campus dealing with more stress than we realize. They're dealing with stress from home. We know with economics and a lot of our families in Ohio and how with jobs in the state of Ohio, a lot of our students are having to take on adult responsibilities or responsibilities that we wouldn't deem appropriate for our children to have to deal with. But the reality is that they do. And so they come and they're dealing and they're worrying about what's happening at home, and I don't have money to pay for school because my parent or my father lost their job. And so, and there's a lot of worry. And then we know in peak times of the semester, when we have midterms and we have finals, that we're going to find that our students are even more stressful. So the challenge for you all is to, hopefully you have the opportunity to be observant with your students, observing their behavior, and to be able to distinguish whether or not a student is being disruptive or if they're distressed. So we look for different behaviors, change in behavior. If there was a student that was really active in class and they were always engaged and willing to participate in class discussions, but then you see that just kind of dies down and they're not as active. They come to class and it's like they're physically there, but mentally they're not involved. You can pick up on some of those signs that may send the message that something else is going on. So we really encourage you all to focus, to pay attention to those distressed students, because again, if a student's in a position where their own safety is in jeopardy or even the safety of others, we definitely want to be able to reach out to that student and provide them the services that they need in order to manage whatever they are dealing with. So now, is this incivility? So my background, I didn't tell you all about it. I worked in residence life for 4 years as a professional staff member, so I'm used to interacting and engaging with students. And I need some feedback. The other part is I'm from the South, and in the South we speak and talk to everyone, whether you know them. And so I'm going to need for you all to give me some feedback. So a couple of questions, just want to see where you all are in your thinking. So a student walks into class 10 minutes late, climbs over and disrupts 4 other students and slams his backpack down on his desk. Is that being uncivil? I see head nods. Can you say yes or no? Yes. Awesome. Okay, absolutely. It's disruptive. Not only are you coming in late and you're crawling over many people, but then you're just slamming your backpack down. Be a little bit more respectful. After receiving his grade on his midterm exam, a student raises his hand and states belligerently, "This exam sucks and this course sucks." First of all, do you think that could happen? Okay, good. I'm glad we're all in tune with reality. Second of all, is it in civil? Most definitely. Most definitely. And it is possible that it will happen because, again, we have students that are stressed and they're frustrated. So it might happen. And so you have to think about how will I address this if this does occur? Okay, in the middle of a lecture, a student stands up and says, "We're not paying you to read to us and put us to sleep," and walks out of the class. Do you think that could happen? Yeah, I see some head nods. Is it in civil? Absolutely, absolutely. Now here's a little twist with this next scenario. A professor returns a midterm exam to his class, announces that the average was 53, then states, "You people ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You call yourselves professional students. This is pathetic." Is that in civil? Yeah, and different too because it's from a professor. One more, and then we'll move on. Another professor tells his students, "If you're looking for entertainment, go to the movies. They don't reward me to be a good teacher here. They reward me to do research. I don't keep office hours for this course. If you have problems, see the teaching assistants." What do you think about that? Yep. Rude, disrespectful, something a student I'm sure would not want to hear, and I'm sure you all wouldn't want to hear that as a student, correct? Absolutely. So one thing I do want to say, incivilities, they don't just happen with students, okay? They also, you can see in civil behavior with professors, all right? And some of our students may look at you and say, my TA is rude and they're disrespectful. So the challenge is not only to address incivilities with our students, but as staff, as faculty, to be mindful of our behavior. Because again, I think quite a bit of our students' frustration comes with how they perceive us as staff members or as faculty. So that's my challenge to you. You won't have many, but that is my challenge, to be mindful of your behavior, because our students, they have the same feelings and they come with a level of expectation for their professors. Okay, and you all are right in there with that level of expectation that they're looking for. So another question, have incivilities or disruptive behaviors in the classroom gotten worse over the past couple of years, or do they occur more frequently than they used to occur? What are your thoughts? A couple people. Have they gotten worse, or do they occur more? Think back if you're not far removed from your undergraduate, I've been out of school for quite a few years, so if you're kind of along there with me, what do you think? Do they occur more in the classroom? And I'll wait. I see heads nodding, but I want to hear from you. Do they occur more? What are your thoughts on this?
Yes.
Yes, and you are?
I'm Uriah.
Uriah. Tell me why.
As you said, there's more technology in the classroom, and it's easier to be incivil and think that you're not being incivil.
Okay, so more technology in the classroom, and it's easy to think that you're being civil when you're not. Okay, thanks, Uriah. Yes, sir.
I think in the lower level undergraduate courses, when you get up into your higher levels, and especially in grad schools, less instability.
Okay, and why do you think that? So he said, and what's your name? Kevin. So Kevin is saying when you are at a lower level of your undergraduate program, there tends to be more incivilities in the classroom, but as a student progresses through their academics, then they become more civil, and especially onto a graduate program. Why do you think that, Kevin?
Maturity level and development.
Maturity and development. Absolutely. Any others? Yes, ma'am.
A professor of mine told me a few years ago that he's seen this type of thing happening because of the culture of the student-teacher dynamic. Before, there was a lot more respect for the professors and things like that. And now, he said that students feel more entitled, and they feel like they're paying the professor, and so that the professor owes them.
Okay.
So they feel they are the head of the classroom. The professor doesn't serve them. So that kind of sense.
Interesting. And your name? Tina. Okay, so Tina stated that it's kind of a cultural shift where students feel like they're more of that they're entitled. They're entitled to what they're being taught. They're entitled to service. They're entitled to be treated in a certain way, per se. And so a culture shift there. I did see one more hand. Did you have next to Kevin a statement or no? Okay. Very, very good comments. So why the increase? Some things that I've come up with, and all of the things that you all indicated, you were right on it. The first thing, life is stressful and demanding, and I've already hit on that. A lot of our students deal with more stress than I know I ever had to as a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior during my undergraduate program. And so I think it's being cognizant of some of the things that our students may deal with, and they're not going to always come and tell you. They don't tell me. A lot of times when I have them in my office, I have to pry information out of them. But I do recognize that a lot of them are dealing with things that sometimes I'm just like, wow, I can't imagine, and I hate it that they're having to go through this. So understanding that life is stressful and demanding. General exposure to rudeness and violence. We can see any and everything on television. We can see any and everything in our neighborhoods, and a lot even on the campus of the University of Toledo. So I think when we look at a cultural shift, not just in terms of generations, but in terms of what's acceptable in society, there are a lot more things now that individuals can do and get away with, and they do it out in the open, where 10, 20 years ago it was unheard of. And my goodness, if you go far beyond that. So as kind of generations and what's more accepted within our society changes, then yes, and to some students it's okay again to stand up and to yell out in a class when you're unhappy. So it's that educational piece that has to come in as well. Students' beliefs about consumerism, and Tina just mentioned that, but how many of you have heard a student say, I'm a customer, and if it weren't for me, you wouldn't be here? Or how many of you all have thought about that as a student? We hear it a lot. And one thing I tell students, because I understand, yes, you are paying for an education, but it doesn't mean that we're just going to hand it to you. You have to work for this. You have to earn the grades that you're getting. And so I'll tell a student, you might be the customer, yes, and you're always going to be the customer, but you're not always right. So I respect the fact that if you feel like you're the customer, to me, you're my student. But if you think you're the customer, okay, that's fine. You are the customer, but it doesn't mean you're always right. It means you're always the customer. And the way I look at it, if you want to view yourself as a customer, I will respect you. I'll assist you as much as I can, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to just present to you everything that you ask for, because I don't have the power to do that, and that's not what we're here to do. But it's very true that the belief is that, well, I'm the customer, I'm paying for this, you need to give me what I want. It doesn't happen that way. But it definitely is, it's a valid belief. Irrational beliefs. When we say irrational beliefs, I think sometimes faculty members, they want to believe that a student is excited, that their maturity level is where it needs to be when they're coming to college. They're here to learn. They're here to get an education. They're here to research. They're here to maximize their learning. And we kind of move forward in that, and encouraging our students and having high expectations of what we think that what they can achieve. Students, on the other hand, again, we know that they feel like they're the customer and you should just hand it to them, but a lot of times they go in the classroom and think this is going to be easy. I breezed through high school, I'm going to breeze through college. And it's a reality check. So sometimes there are irrational beliefs on both ends of the spectrum, which then causes for more frustration, which causes for students to feel like, okay, what am I doing there? They're not helping me. And then the blow up can occur, the speaking out or the yelling in the classroom. Okay? And then inaccurate assessment of students' prior knowledge. And again, that's assuming if you're an honor student that the level of work, it's going to be top notch, that, you know what, you're going to come in, you're going to really be focused. And you know what, this student may be in the honors program because their parent really pushed them to be in the honors program, and that student could care less about being in the honors program. So again, it's sometimes just thinking that inaccurate assessment of a student's knowledge. So we may think that they're up here and they're not. And in reverse, again, a lot of it is the student thinking, oh, I'm in a 1,000 level course, this should be easy. But the fact is, we're going to challenge you because we want you to be prepared for that next step. Okay, so implications of civility and incivility. Civility promotes inquiry and enriches the flow of ideas. Incivility, on the other hand, has several adverse impacts on the learning community. One, faculty and staff stress, discontent, and burnout. So incivility, it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating, and it can create a lot of stress for you all in the classroom. Student learning opportunities are obstructed. Absolutely. If I'm sitting in a class and there's always disruption going on, I would be frustrated. I really would be frustrated because I view the classroom as a positive learning and a positive environment where I should be able to learn. I should be able to engage with other students and with my professor, and by the end of the semester have a wealth of knowledge that I didn't have before. So as a student, a former student, I would definitely be upset. And then administrators' time is consumed with problem resolution. That means me. That means when you have an outburst in your classroom, more than likely the student is going to come see me. And I have to sit there and I have to meet with them and have an educational conversation on how to behave in the classroom, what we expect of our students at the University of Toledo. I pull out my wonderful copy of the Student Code of Conduct and I go through. I want to educate you on this policy, this policy, this policy, this policy, because as I stated in the beginning, most of our students don't even know of a Student Code of Conduct. And so that's my opportunity to educate them, but also say, if this happens again, or if you're in my office again, for a reason similar to this, you're not only going to meet with me, but you're going to meet with our student conduct officer. So it's kind of like this is a last chance agreement. This is the opportunity to get right, okay? But absolutely, then I have to sit there, and then I'll reach back out to you all and let you know that I've had the conversation with the student. They're ready to attend your class again. I generally don't let them come back to class until they've met with me. And if they do, that's failure to comply, which means we can send them through conduct, and we really don't want that. What we want them to do is to learn from this situation that's occurred. So what's the role of faculty? When we look at your role in the terms of classroom civility, build respect. Respect goes a long way. Create a positive learning environment. Generate an atmosphere of trust. Keep appointments in office hours. I'll tell you, I've had a number of students that'll come by and say, I've been reaching out to my professor or my TA and I can't find them. Or they're not there when they have their stated office hours. I mean, that goes back again to respect. Talk to students before and after class. I think just making yourself available if you can, if your schedule allows you to be accessible to students. Just that willingness. Provide students with quality feedback and demonstrate enthusiasm for the subject and course. Many of you all in here are younger in age. And so one of the things that in reading about classroom civility, competence goes a long way. And so when students come in, and in some of our wonderful first year students, that this is a really big learning curve for them, and they see someone who is overseeing the course. They're looking at the professor, and they're like, this person doesn't look like they're much older than me. Or I think I can get over, or I can run the class, or they won't be this individual that is this older person who they envision, who has more experience here, and thinking that they can just kind of take over and not be respectful. One of the things I want to encourage you all to do is to keep in mind that you are that expert in the room, okay? And regardless if we're 1 year apart or if there are 5 years in between the ages, you're still the expert. You're still the professor in the room, and at the end of the day, you're the professor, they're the student, okay? So be competent. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. So be competent in your abilities to not only lead the class, but to instruct them in the way that you should, definitely. So some preemptive steps. The first thing that definitely can help in setting the stage, list class rules and expectations in your syllabus. We encourage our students during orientation where we are educating our students that your syllabus is going to be your best friend for every class because it's going to have all the information you need to be successful. That includes having rules and expectations included. So day one, the first day of class, of course, you should have it planned accordingly on how the first class meeting is going to go. It should be strategic. And a part of that should be going over what you expect in the class. Discuss expectations on the first day, and then consider asking students to participate in setting classroom rules. It's really powerful, and it's something that we use a lot in the residence hall when it came to how we're going to live within this community. And they will say, well, we want our floor to be clean, or we want our residence hall to look good. That means if you see trash, pick it up. The same thing can happen in the classroom. We want to challenge our students to take ownership of their learning environment. With that being stated, what are your expectations? What do you expect of me as your TA? What do you expect of the person sitting next to you? So challenge your students to take ownership of the learning environment. That way, if something does transpire, then what you can do is kind of put it back on them. Didn't we talk about this the first day of class? We came up with our expectations for how we're going to learn, how we're going to operate this environment. So kind of put that ownership back onto them. That's something that I think they'll probably go for, and they'll probably appreciate, and you may appreciate it as well. So addressing passive incivilities. If there are some not necessarily loud and overt disruptions occurring in the room, but if you can identify some minor distractions, make direct eye contact with the students that are involved. Okay? Because again, it's not a power play, but it is, I'm letting you know that you're being disruptive. I can hear you from here. So kind of quiet down a little bit, or stop talking and don't start until you have students' attention. And again, it's okay. They'll know exactly what's going on, or they'll get it at some point. Move to that part of the classroom. You have the ability to move around, hopefully. So move to that part of the classroom. More than likely, they'll be quiet. Get students actively involved in the classroom, and then speak to students privately about their actions. Anytime that there's disruption that's going on, it's best to address it at that time. Okay? If not, it can continue to fester, not only for that class period, but as you go along throughout the remaining of the semester, the remaining part of the semester. So address them. Don't let actions that are disruptive go without not acknowledging them, so that the students know I need to do some things different, or I'll find myself in a different position. Addressing disruptive behavior, listen respectfully to students' complaints, allow them to vent. This is something that you may have, you're just going to have to, you're going to have to gauge whether or not this should continue. If you have an outburst in the classroom and this student, they're being belligerent and they're going to tell you off, it may be best to say, I understand your frustration. Once they get it out, come talk to me after class. Okay, just show that you're willing to listen. You may not be able to change what they're upset about, but give them that respect, because obviously it's something that they are frustrated about, and you actually may be able to turn around how they view you as the TA. Be calm and not aggressive. Offer again to speak with the student after class. Ask the student to leave if disruptive behavior continues, and it's okay to do that. Call for assistance when needed and document the incident. Also report the behavior to student conduct or UTPD. And when it's student conduct, you can call even our office, the Office for the Student Experience, and speak with me about it. And then addressing distress behavior. And again, I talked about the distress behavior when we're looking at students that may exhibiting mental health concerns. But speak with the student privately and listen carefully. They may not, again, they may not be as willing to open up or to share information, but the fact that you're showing concern, they may feel comfortable in doing that. Let the student know you're concerned about them. Make referrals to the appropriate resources. And when I say that, we have UTPD, our counseling center, our student conduct office, the Office for the Student Experience. Maintain clear and consistent boundaries. Recognize your limits. We're not all counselors, so that doesn't mean that we can sit here and think we can counsel a student and get them to where they need to be. But we do have appropriate resources on campus that can provide those services. And so know your limits. Know how far you can go with a student when you're trying to help them. And know that it is okay to say, you know what, I need to connect you with someone else that can continue to provide you wonderful service and give you the help that you need, the appropriate help that you need. And then document the interaction or incident and report the behavior. And when I say that, then it includes keeping notes of things, because if you reach out to any of us, we're going to ask, can you give us some specific information so that we have that information to go off of. Speaking with your supervisors, your professors, or even the department chairs in the college, so that they are aware of the situations that are occurring, and that's even with the distressed student and the disruptive student, okay? So you want to always make sure that the faculty members in your program, the appropriate faculty members are aware of what's going on, and that we're all in the communication loop on how to proceed with that student, what we're going to do, and then you will always receive the follow-up on what's going on with the student. And then final, some campus resources. And again, the University Counseling Center, the Office for the Dean for the Student Experience, which is my office, the Office for the Vice President for the Student Experience, and then our Toledo Police Department. And you see both the emergency and non-emergency phone number on there. That's the information that I have for you. And I just want to, again, just kind of hone in on the fact that This information goes for in and outside of the classroom, or in the physical classroom as well as the online environment. So if you're teaching or you're overseeing an online class and you're finding disruptive behavior going on in within a chat room, address it. It needs to be addressed. So it does not need to go on, and you're seeing this and it's not being addressed appropriately. So be mindful of that. Be mindful of definitely of your role and what we look for, what we expect out of our teaching assistants. Okay? What questions do you all have? Well, I did great.